Hello, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Dillon.
And welcome to the show where we review books and their movie adaptations. One of us reads the book before watching the movie, and the other watches the movie and then reads the book, and we give you our recommendations for which order gives you the best experience.
Today's episode is The Last Duel.
Yeah, so The Last Duel, a true story of trial by combat in medieval France, a book by Eric Jager, written in 2004, currently has a Goodreads score of 3.96 stars. And it's the story of the last judicial duel fought between Jean de Carouge and Jacques Legris in 1386 France. And so specifically the last judicial duel, which is the duel where the verdict of the case is decided by combat. There were later authorized duels between people where I guess they probably just were like, hey, we want a duel, and they're like, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Eric Jager's book, The Last Duel, was adapted into a film, also called The Last Duel. The film adaptation of The Last Duel was released in 2021. It was directed by Ridley Scott, a prolific English director known for movies like Alien, Blade Runner, Black Hawk Down, The Martian, and probably most similar to The Last Duel, Gladiator. The Last Duel, in the movie adaptation, it casts Matt Damon as Jean de Carouge, Adam Driver as Jacques Legris, Jodie Comer as the Lady Marguerite, and Ben Affleck as Count Pierre d'Alençon. Damon and Affleck also co-wrote the screenplay adaptation of Jager's book, along with Nicole Holofcener, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, who is a film and TV writer and director who was once a student of Martin Scorsese. The movie version of The Last Duel currently has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 86% by the critics and 81% by the audience.
All right, so into our ratings.
Here are our ratings
for
the book and the movie.
For the book and the movie. So yeah, I read the book first, and I give the book a 6.4 out of 10. And I give the movie, after having seen that, a 4.2.
Wow, okay. Interesting. I watched the movie first and then read the book. After watching the movie, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. And then when I read the book, I gave that a 6.5 out of 10.
Oh, okay. So this is the point we're heading into now that will be spoilers. We're going to talk all sorts of about the book and the movie. So if you don't want anything spoiled, you can skip right ahead. We'll give you that time code here. We'll probably put something in the description that tells you where that is.
Yep. So we've given our ratings of each. We're moving into spoiler alert territory. If you want to fast forward, jump to the end, you can see our final recommendation. So yeah, now we're going to discuss why we gave the scores that we did and why they are different.
Well, so clearly the book score very similar.
Yeah, almost the same.
6.4, 6.5.
Yeah.
So that didn't change based on the order.
Yeah,
the
that's
movie,
interesting.
Very different.
Very different, yeah.
Yours is almost twice my score.
Yeah, yeah, that's surprising.
And,
that's a pretty big difference.
My score also very much lower than the Rotten Tomatoes scores, both of them.
Yeah,
which
yours is like
surprised
half of it.
me. You know, it's not surprising necessarily that the critics gave it kind of a high score because it's made very well, in my opinion. But that the audience liked it so much because I was the biggest part of my low score was to me it was boring. After having read the book and knowing what what went on to the best of I guess the author's research. Having the story told the way that it was, which I guess we can kind of get into. It's told. I can describe it. So, in terms of the structure, the movie is split up into 3 chapters, showing the audience 3 perspectives on one timeline of events surrounding the alleged rape of Jean de Carouge's wife, Marguerite. First, we get the truth according to Matt Damon's Carouge.
Then it goes back to the beginning and we get the truth according to Driver's Legree. Then it goes back a third time and shows the same set of events, the truth according to Jodie Comer as the Lady Marguerite. All of that before we get to see the duel.
Mm-hmm. Which, in terms of the general structure, all of that before we get to see the duel is pretty similar to the book. The book has a lot that it goes over before you get to the duel, and the duel is just a tiny little thing almost at the end.
Yeah. But it doesn't repeat.
Yeah, that's the big difference, is it doesn't repeat. My idea or my thought, behind it was the book takes a stance as to what its opinion is of what happened. True. And the movie does too, by introducing Marguerite's the truth according to Marguerite, and then it fades away, and then the truth kind of is the last thing that fades away.
Yeah.
So it does take a stance, but by presenting all three perspectives, it kind of leaves it open to these people said this,
Yeah, that we don't really know. There's no way for us to know, but that's what they all say.
Yeah. So and the book does do that. The book, starts out by making it clear that we don't really know, but and that he fills in parts with what he thought, what he thinks likely somebody's reaction would be, or what. And I don't think necessarily it's bad in general if the movie was portrayed that way, but yes, because having read it and you already know what's going on already going into it, still seeing that 3 different times is just like, okay, I already know all of this, so I don't need to see it 3 times to get, there's the little nuances of different things in between, but the book will explains those kinds of things
in one
as it goes along in one string. And kind of in my opinion with the movie, they could have done it that way and presented all 3 sides in terms of their opinion in a way, and they could have put in more information that the book does include about the atmosphere of medieval France at the time and stuff. The book has a lot of that information in it.
I agree with that, but I could see how, or at least I can imagine how reading the book first would really ruin a lot of the tension and suspense of watching the movie, because I wanted to see the duel happen, of course, watching the movie, but I didn't know what was going to happen, so I did probably enjoy seeing the different perspectives more in it, having the tension leading up, and it did get a little repetitive, but that's why I don't think it's a great movie, like in 9 or 10 range, or even super good in 8.
So your rating is even, I know that's not how Rotten Tomato rating works. It's not like IMDb where it's on a scale of 1 to 10. It's just, like did somebody like it or did they not?
Yeah.
And then it aggregates those scores. But even given that, your rating is a little bit lower.
It's lower, yeah. So I do think it's overrated according to Rotten Tomatoes, but not hugely overrated like yours is like half the score.
Yeah.
I think it's just a little bit overrated, maybe by like a grade point, if you could think of it in that way. So it's repetitive, but I found some, not all of the subtle nuances and the different perspectives to be interesting enough. But yeah, by the time it gets to the 3rd chapter and it goes back to the beginning again, I was a little frustrated because it seemed like it was about to go to the duel, and Adam Driver, like, they gave the sentencing even. The king was like, okay, we're going to go ahead with the duel. And then Adam Driver's like, what now? And I'm like, okay, it's going to happen. And then it's like, chapter 3, we're going back to the beginning again.
Wow, yeah, I didn't even remember that, that was the ending of chapter 2 into chapter 3, because we saw the movie together, and we kind of talked a little bit about stuff, and I mentioned that I thought also that it was going to go to the duel right then. I was like, okay, this is going to be the duel, because the way the book's presented, it's really, between these 2 guys, and Marguerite really is at the center of what happened with everything, but her perspective really is not, talked about as much in the book. I think probably because there's not a lot to go off of. It's a book based on historical research. Yeah,
and they wouldn't have recorded her perspective as much, or taken her very seriously, probably.
Yeah, which I understand then why that's put into the movie.
For modern audience.
But also, having read the book, I think maybe even more so than your perspective of seeing the end of chapter 2 of the movie, I expected it to go into the duel at that point, and it started, the truth according to Marguerite, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to go through this again. Yeah. And really, that was also, I think, what piled on to that chapter that's the chapter, I think I would say, where they made up the most stuff from the movie that wasn't in the book. Because they gave her like, oh, she's doing really well, taking over the keep, whatever, while Carouge is gone.
Yeah. And her friend, the character of her friend, is not even in the book, right? That I remember.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think they portray her in the book as basically staying inside all the time, wherever she is. Like, she doesn't really go out anywhere, is what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, that whole portion of the movie was made up for the movie, which is another thing where, just because I was kind of bored in the movie, and it just made it kind of go downhill for me. I was like, okay, and this isn't even,
Yeah, so you're already bored, you want the duel to happen, and then it's not even accurate anymore, and you're aware of that.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. It just makes it really, aware the things that it changed. And that's the thing. The other thing that they changed, which, I mean, I guess I could see why they did it, I guess, but it doesn't seem like it would be an overwhelming reason why they would do it, is they changed Jacques Legree's defense. Did you notice that? Because his defense in the movie was, oh yeah, it happened. But it wasn't rape because she wanted it to happen.
Yeah.
In the book, he completely denied it, and he gave his whole defense like, no, this is where I was. Yeah. I couldn't have possibly gotten there in this amount of time. And even Jean de Carouge was like, no, he could have gotten there, because he's got the best horses and the blah, blah, blah. So he presented, tried to present an alibi and completely deny it.
Yeah.
Which
that's an interesting courtroom case thing that could have been good in the movie.
Yeah, I think it makes it more, it makes it more of a conflict, the case in the movie, and that he denies that it even happened. Whereas, the way they did it in the movie, it's kind of like, well, no, this happened, but it's like, now you're arguing over semantics.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that much until now. Yeah, in the movie, Adam Driver's Legree is like, it's very clear that it happened, and he knows that it happened, but just given attitudes at the time, he didn't think it was a rape. He just thought, oh yeah, she like playfully ran away and said no, but that's what a lady has to do. It was basically flirtation. But yeah, in the book, the rape was much worse the way it's depicted. But then also, he flat out denies it happened. He had an alibi set up, like you said. He says he was in another town. He has other people corroborate that, that he couldn't have made it there in time.
Yeah. Well, and obviously they changed stuff more around the whole event in question in the movie because, like you said, it's more violent as depicted in the book. And also, what's that guy? Adam Louvel, the guy who's there with him. He's there the whole time.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Actually, I had a list of surprises that
in the book. In the book, what Marguerite's account is that he's also there the whole time.
Yeah, in the movie he's in the castle, like he helps Trick to get Legree in there. But yeah, in the book's account of it, he was in the room when it happened, helped tie her down even, which wasn't in the movie, the tying of her down or him being in the room. But yeah, that reminded me, since I watched the movie first, as I was reading the book, I couldn't help but take notes of every surprise of something that was totally different. So I have a list of surprises that I found while reading the book. That was one of them, but let me see which other ones we haven't mentioned yet. The first one that I noticed was about 20 pages into the book. Jacques Legree lent Count Pierre, Ben Affleck in the movie, 3,000 francs, and then Pierre gifted him the land Aulnoy-le-Faucon or whatever.
Yes,
the disputed land.
That's right at the beginning too.
Yeah, so
of the
Carouge, Carouge was jealous in the book, in the historical account. He was jealous because his family was older and more distinguished than Legree's family. He felt that his family was more worthy than Legree. So, unlike the movie, Carouge was not promised the land as part of the wedding dowry.
Right. He just thought he should have it after he got married.
Yeah, he was already married to his previous wife still before she died. But in the movie, they made it seem, well, they showed it as when Matt Damon's as Carouge was marrying Marguerite, he signed that he was going to get the dowry, he was going to get the land, and then Count Pierre just gave it to Legree.
Yeah.
So that totally changes that.
Yeah,
conflict.
I was expecting when they showed The Truth According to Jacques Legree, when it first was clear that that's how this movie was going to be set up, they were going to portray it the correct way. That like they were going to change that detail to go like, no, he was given that land before. Because
that would have been such a big difference.
Married Marguerite, because it makes a big difference, and it's part of the story that paints Jean de Carouge kind of the way that the movie paints him too. Other than his view, right, is that he's just jealous, like spiteful about everything, so that's a weird one to me that they changed.
I don't see why they wouldn't play up that conflict, especially the way you said. It would have been good if in Carouge's it was like, oh, I was promised that as a dowry, and then in Legree's truth, it would be like, no, he gave that to me before he even married her.
I thought that's what was going to happen, is that they were going to change more important details about each point of view, but they only just changed like nuances about how people acted, just
subtle dialogue,
subtle stuff about how things may have been lost in interpretation, but they didn't. I was expecting them to change the facts that people remembered about situations, but they didn't do that. So
that was the first one. The second surprise that I had is just that there was lots of speculation from the author, Jager. You kind of mentioned it. It applies to the whole book. Even at the beginning in the author's note, he says, quote, where historical record is silent, I use my own imagination to fill in some of the gaps.
I just wanted... Are we recording? And we're back.
All right, welcome back. Sorry, we lost the camera there for a while.
A long time. And at least we noticed it before the end, though.
Yeah, but we had the audio going, so...
So this will cut back in somewhere, and I think we're at your second point.
Yes. So the second surprise was just lots of speculation from the author. He says in the author's note, where historical record is silent, I use my own imagination to fill in some of the gaps. And then the most striking one from the actual book that stood out to me was, it's around page 58 to 60. He says, what happened that day in the court is nearly a blank. And then he goes on and speculates for multiple paragraphs. It's the part where, he says Jean may also have boasted loudly of how he left France as a squire and returned a knight. So it was the scene in the movie where he comes back a knight and he has the argument with Legree, where he's like, you will call me sir because I am a knight. And they have that whole argument in front of Pierre. So I was just surprised that was a scene in the movie, and it was one of the things that was just made up, basically speculated by the author.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot to go on, so I understand why he did that. The fact that there's a lot of speculation is also why I very nearly rated the book much lower. Yeah. Until it got to the end. The duel being pretty excitingly written in the book, in my opinion. Yeah. And the epilogue and appendix at the end of the book is what pushed it up to the score that I gave it. Because before that, it probably would have been close to what the movie was, in my opinion. Because to me, it didn't take it. It took this weird middle of the road between a novelization narrative thing and a dense research historical account of how they know, how he knows what he knows through his research. So he touches on some of that stuff during the body, the main part of the book. He sort of touches on what sources are and stuff, but not a lot. Still some of it is presented in a narrative way, which makes it kind of seem weird when he is saying this may have happened. It's like, why is it even presented as a narrative? He could say this may have happened, but it be a little bit more, of a historical account, which is
Yeah.
what he kind of does at the end in the appendix, where he says like, oh, here's why some of the stuff is controversial. Here's what some people think. And he gives sources and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, oh, where was this the whole time? I would have loved it to be like that, because that is closer to the only other like historical type of book that I've read recently, A Woman of No Importance, which I would recommend as a good book. And I think we plan to try to do that at some point on this show.
Stay tuned.
Because I think there's a movie coming out next year. But that one does that well, where it does actually present a really good narrative. And
the whole time?
Yeah, the whole time. And it's historically, it's got a lot of the historical stuff in there. There's a lot of footnotes and that kind of thing during the book.
I totally agree with that. That's probably why our book scores are so similar.
Yeah.
Because, I felt totally the same. I even wrote that down after my surprises, because it's at the end. I really liked the appendix, the quarrels aftermath.
Yeah.
I love the way that was written. It framed it as like a historical debate.
Mm-hmm.
And it just had a better tone, the research tone, where you can tell the author, Jager, is asserting what he believes about the facts as they are, and he summarizes some other scholars' opinions, how they base them on the sources. And it's written more like an academic legal argument, but it also felt more dramatic to me, because it felt like it's a real criminal case and something that's like continually important in history, because people are still arguing over it. Whereas the way it's written during the body of the book, where it's, kind of academic, but then tries to be a novelization, tries to be accessible by being dramatic, it makes it seem less real. It seems like a fairy tale, or like, an epic poem or something.
Yeah.
Where it just kind of popped me out of it.
Yeah.
So I agree. I wish that he'd written more of the actual book the way that he wrote the appendix. But this is where we differ in the movie. Is the reason that I liked the movie more and that has a higher score is partly, at least, simply because I feel like the movie knew better what it wanted to be. So it didn't have the awkward tone. It knew it just wanted to be entertainment and drama, and it just went in on that. So it didn't have the awkward in-between tone that the book did.
Yeah, I get that. And I could definitely see that if you watched the movie first. I think my only problem was knowing everything ahead of time. Yeah. It just makes it not an interesting movie. Really. I actually think that if the book were written, as a historical research book, that I would have probably liked the movie better, because then the book, is hard one way. It's like, it's historical. That's what the book is. It's all the research, and the movie is just the entertainment part of it. Yeah, and I think I probably would have liked the movie better if that were the case, maybe. Yeah,
because then it's like reading the facts, reading a history textbook, and then the movie's just an interpretation of like, okay, how dramatic would this have been, like in a big blockbuster movie way. Yeah, that would be interesting. So that jumped ahead a little bit, but I had 4 other surprises. I came along.
Keep going.
Okay, actually, we already mentioned my third surprise was that the rape of Marguerite was even more horrible in the book than in the movie. Legree was clearly the villain with a premeditated plan, because he had the alibi set up. And first he offered her money to have sex with him, and
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then she denied that. And then, like we said, Adam Lovell was there the whole time, helped carry her upstairs instead of chasing her. They carried her and then tied her down and everything. That was a surprise.
Yeah, so, and that's another thing, right, as a difference. We already talked about the fact that in the movie, Legree doesn't deny anything about what happened, but the way it's portrayed is in the movie he comes in and he professes his love to her. In all accounts, I think, right, is that's what happens, is he's like, oh, he's in love, and not at all is that presented in the book.
That's really not even suggested at any point.
And that's kind of part of that difference there.
That actually gets to my next surprise, which was there was just a footnote actually that said Marguerite may have relied on memory because even if she could read, she did not necessarily know how to write, a separately taught skill that many literate people never learned. So the movie basically made up that she could read, and that's a thing she had in common with Legree.
Yeah,
and their whole flirtatious thing that they had more in common.
Yeah, it was part of the additional characterization of Marguerite in the movie that she didn't have much of a character presented in the book. I think because of the lack of information would be my guess. But I know. I thought that kind of thing when they in the movie when they added that, I was like, okay.
That's where it, I guess, also makes it seem like the movie takes less of a stance because it adds in basically that made up nuance that maybe Legree was really in love with her, and that maybe they did have more in common than her and Carouge, but that's basically made up. Yeah,
that's true. And I do like that the book took a hard stance, whereas, there's still a lot of people, it looks like, who say, no, Marguerite completely made this up and lied about it, that he takes a stance of, no, that's why not likely the case.
And that shows up the best again in the appendix where Jager says, like, this is my stance, but there are other people who disagree, and this is what they think. That, she made it up. Another thing that surprised me from the book that they didn't include this in the movie, but I thought it would be interesting if they did, is that someone challenged Adam Lovell to a duel also. And then Lovell also was judiciously tortured, which was apparently a common thing in France at the time. That would have been really good, shocking movie drama, and I'm surprised they didn't include that.
Yeah, and that stuff falls under what I was saying before about if they didn't present the movie with the 3 different points of view, retellings from different points of view, they could have added a lot more stuff.
They would have had more time for that. Yeah.
And that's one of them.
Yeah, just another duel. The whole being judiciously tortured, that's not something I knew about historically.
Well, and he was tortured and didn't give anything up.
Yeah, he never confessed.
Also, which makes it more of a, like, what is going on? Why wouldn't this guy who's just, he probably knows he probably would have been killed or something.
Because it would have found Legree guilty and they probably both would have been hanged.
Yeah, but the way that it turned out was, okay, so Legree's fate will be decided by this duel, but since nothing other than the duel was ever conclusive in any way, Adam, he just kind of, gets away as a side person, kind of, which in the, either way, the book or the movie, I guess the movie doesn't really say anything about, okay, what about him? He had a part in what happened.
Yeah.
But then they didn't even talk about him.
That's true. Even in the courtroom scenes, it wasn't like he was on trial. He was kind of in the audience.
Yeah.
Even though he would have been at least an accomplice. So that was weird. Let's see. The last surprise that I had was that Jean de Carouge was given money, some from Legree's estate, after winning the duel. Mm-hmm. And then he tried to appeal for the land again, the disputed land, but was unsuccessful again because Count Pierre still had prior ownership.
No, I think, I was disappointed in the movie that after the duel, they didn't really do much. That was like the end of the movie.
Yeah, it just shows them going through town on the horse. Everyone's cheering. And then it flashes forward.
And then it flashes forward to, their son is born. And then
a few years later, Carouge dies in the Crusades.
Yeah.
And the book even goes into the Crusades.
It talks about that stuff, which I think would have been kind of interesting. Maybe you don't need to present the Crusades stuff, but maybe you do. I think it maybe would have been an okay ending for them to, make up some kind of battle that he just,
or maybe been at least another
he goes into one
scene.
And then we just don't know what happens to him. But the book presents a lot more stuff that happens to Marguerite afterward. Don't they have another child though too? Doesn't it say that? Am I mistaken?
I don't remember.
They
might have.
I thought they had another child, which that would make it more possible that their first child was John's,
because they weren't sure.
Because the timing of her pregnancy was very close to Jean coming back from Scotland.
Yeah,
and
before going to Paris.
Yeah, before going to Paris, and when the rape happened, which is while he was in Paris. So it really was up in the air.
Yeah, and they thought that it could be Legree's because they were struggling for a long time.
For so long before that. But the fact that they had a child later would
Hold on.
be...
I think it's not recording again.
Wow. Okay, we're back again. Yeah, we were just saying that there was more stuff at the end in the book that was presented. I think that's where we were at, right?
Yeah, it went a little while back past the duel for
which
what
I think
happened afterwards.
it would have been interesting to have that stuff in the movie a little bit. One last thing, if you didn't have anything else really that you wanted to talk about, one last thing that I wanted to mention about the movie was I was disappointed that because in my mind they could have done the duel pretty much exactly how it was described in the book, and I think it would have been better.
It was described well in the book.
I think it would have been better because, especially the end of it, the end of the fight was much better because what actually the difference was Legree could afford a better suit of armor. His armor was more put together. So the way that it actually ended in the book was... Jean de Carouge does get stabbed in the leg, and everybody expects him to bleed out. But then he rushes at him, knocks him over, but he can't get into his armor because it's so good.
I did like that in the book.
And so he ends up having to fumble with to get his latch up on his helmet, and then he ends up killing him basically almost the same way as in the movie. But it would have been so much more tension if he's trying to struggle with getting his helmet open and stuff. But in the movie, clearly, obviously, they did it so that you could see the actors' faces, because of the star power or whatever. Sure. But they both had helmets that only covered half their face. Whereas in the book, it seemed like they both had helmets that, were, only partly. And in the movie, did they joust more than once?
I think they did.
They did, but
I think they went by twice.
But in the book, I think they skipped one part in the book. In the book, they hit each other's shields first or something like that. And then they hit each other's in the helmet or something, right? Didn't they glance, so. And I was like, that would have been cool. Yeah. Before then they hit each other and one of them falls off and one of them hits the horse as the horse is going by. Oh yeah. There's so much cooler stuff. Into the horse. Yeah, there's so much cooler stuff about the fight that's in the book.
That is really surprising that they wouldn't put that in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't do it exactly how it's in the book because it's described very well in the book and they didn't do anything else in the movie that is any better than that. Yeah. And so
that's the big on-the-screen blockbuster moment you would want in a movie called The Last Duel. Yeah. You would expect it to be the action. I really liked that in the book. Maybe they thought it'd be hard to explain because in the book you get some of the action, but then the narrator can come in and explain, stuff that we kind of already knew, how Legree was more well-off and he had the latest military armor, so his armor was better. But I really liked that, how... You would think he would bleed out because he got hit, your biggest artery is in your leg. But then, he just charges... Or in the book, actually, he grabbed him by the helmet and just threw him on the ground. And then he's like a turtle, basically. He can't get up. Uh-huh. He could slowly get up, but even if he did, Carouge would have enough time to just knock him back down. So, he's trying to hit him with the sword. It's just glancing off, and he has to, straddle him and open the thing.
Yeah. And then the other thing that isn't necessarily a problem about the movie that I just noticed it was interesting to me, the description in the book of the crowd at one of these events. It was basically illegal to say anything or be loud.
They had to be silent.
That was part of it. They had to be silent, and usually they were silent. But in the movie, there's cheers and gasps and all that. That loud kind of stuff that is what you would expect. But I don't know how else they would have, that was one of those things where the author can give that detail and beforehand, but how are they going to present that in the movie without people going why is it so quiet during this duel?
It would all have to be in a previous scene or something where they say they're going over the rules and they're like, everyone be quiet because if you're not quiet, we might miss something or you'll get hanged or whatever the consequences were. They'd have to probably do the same thing with the armor where it's an earlier scene where it shows them buying their armor and Legree's is way more high tech.
Yeah, I think that the armor thing could be portrayed by just how the armor looks. Even like you
True.
could even make Legree's like really nice and shiny, and Carouge's is all kind of beat up a little bit,
Yeah,
and you'd
just
be like, oh
dirty
yeah, his armor
flimsier.
and spots where you could stab through that's leather or something, whereas
Yeah, they could easily
Legree's
do
is
that with the
fully-
leg thing because he stabs him in the leg.
Yeah.
Like Legree could just not have that
He
gap.
doesn't
even
have the
there.
gaps, and that's how it's portrayed in the book. Is he can't stab him anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. They could have done that.
Yeah.
That reminded me something I really liked about the ending of the book. It goes, like we said, way beyond what the movie did. I liked how it was like right at the end. It talked about where duels went after that because that was the last judicious duel. So it's like recognized by the court and it decides the outcome of a case. But then it kind of traced how duels kept happening. Like they were technically legal in Britain until the 1800s. It's just one never happened.
Right.
But on paper it was legal. The last legal duel, I think, or maybe off the books duel, happened in Ireland at like years later. But yeah, and then it even talked about how people still handled things in duels into the time of having pistols.
Yeah.
And that just reminded me of history, learning about, what Aaron Burr, how they would have duels with the pistol, but it was all off the books. So it added the element of even if you win the duel, you would be wanted for murder. So you'd have to like run away from the law. So it's like you either die or you're a murderer now.
Yeah.
But people would still settle disputes with duels hundreds and hundreds of years after this one.
Yeah.
Just thought that was interesting. So is that it?
Yeah, I think that's all that we have. So what's left is for us to give our recommendations for which order is better, right? Basically, and whether either or is worth reading or watching.
Yeah. So do you want to go first, or is it going to be different?
Well, I don't know if ours are going to be different. I would say if you have any interest in watching the movie, watch the movie first, and then read the book, because the book I think is still good. Will probably obviously I didn't do them in that order, but I would imagine the book would still be good after watching the movie, whereas the movie was completely kind of ruined for me after watching the book. So that would be my recommendation: is watch the movie first.
Then read the book.
Yeah, if anything else, or if anything, really, honestly, just read the book. If you're like into history or something, only read the book.
Okay.
That would be my only read the book.
Okay.
Like you don't even need to see the movie.
Yeah, that's actually pretty similar to my recommendation. Like in conclusions, the movie knew better what it wanted to be. Like I said, just action and drama. The book was like confused about whether it wanted to be academic or sensationalized. So I would say the movie's worth a watch if you're into medieval action movies or legal dramas even. Good entertainment before reading the book, of course. And then, I would say only read the book if you are interested by the case of the movie and you want to know more about what actually happened. So if you're like a history buff or you want to know more details, context, then read the book. But yeah, I also like what you said. If you're into the history aspect of it and actual facts, then you could skip the movie and just easily read the book. So we've got different scores for the movie, but similar recommendation at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, and as far as our average scores for everything, well, the book comes out an average of 6.45.
6.45, yeah.
Very close to the same.
6.45 out of 10. Official score of The Last Duel by Eric Jager. Okay, official score of The Last Duel by Ridley Scott. 5.85 out of 10.
And I know I dragged that one down, that score.
Yeah.
But that's our score. That's our average score for that one.
That puts the movie a little bit lower than the book at the end.
Yeah, just because mine was so much lower.
Yeah.
Even though yours was higher. But, we each have our individual scores, and we'll keep all that statistics too. So
either way, the movie, according to Rotten Tomatoes, is overrated, in our opinion. So
and so the book was 3.96, which if we convert that to a score out of 10, it's
almost 8.
Almost 8. So
the book is
even overrated, as in our opinions.
Yeah,
everything overrated.
It's a really interesting, true story. They're true events. Like it's a interesting part of history. But yeah, clearly based on our interpretation, both the book's telling and the movie are overrated.
Yeah, again, I'm so surprised. I'm very surprised that
By the high scores.
the movie is scored so high. The book, I kind of get. I mean, I could see that people would like the book, and especially since I like the book better than the movie. But the scores of the movie, I don't know. I don't know how people score movies. Like I look at Rotten Tomato scores and I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm always just confused by them. Either way, I don't know. It's hard to guess how people would receive.
But then again, maybe that's because of the fact that they're like an aggregation. They're a how many like percentage of people who have scored it favorably versus unfavorably.
Yeah,
right?
It doesn't have the nuance of.
Yeah, so it's not the same as like an 80% is not an 8 out of 10 necessarily.
True. Yeah,
like
if
anything
someone
over 50% is fresh, 50 or 60, something like that.
So like if someone said, "Oh, this movie was a 6 out of 10," they would only be able to give a thumbs up, and that would add to the positive score.
Yeah.
Instead of giving it a 6.
Yeah, it's basically saying that 80-something% of people or critics
but it's 6
said it was
or higher.
gave it a favorable review, which I guess I could see that. I wouldn't say that most people would say that it was bad, except for me, I guess.
Yeah. People who read the book first might. You know.
All right, so I think that's probably all we got. You do all the things that you need to do. You like and subscribe. I hear people talk about some kind of bell. I don't know if that's still there. I don't even know what that is.
Hit subscribe and then hit the bell so you get notifications every time we put out a new video. And like this video, comment what you think.
Exactly.
Do you agree? Did you like the book? Did you hate the book?
Agree with him or agree with me?
Yeah, who's right out of us?
It's me. Well, it doesn't
We're both
matter.
right about the book.
We both have a different perspective. Yeah, we're right about the book. Comment who you think is right about the book. Is it 6.4 or is it 6.5?
Yeah.
And then if there's videos on this video now at the end here that are links to click to other videos, click those. There might not be. If you're watching this really early, there might not be there. We might not have any other videos.
Yeah, maybe not, but stay tuned because there will be more. That's why you need to follow, like, subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode 2. We're going to be talking about Under the Skin.
Yes. I almost said that, and I almost said Under the Duel.
Under the Duel, the last skin.
The last skin. All right, so here's the end of the longest outro ever.
Yes, thank you for watching. Goodbye.
See ya.